Good afternoon. I am, hang on, I think I am now on now. There we go. Here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. I am very humbled to be here and be one of the presenters here, but I was also very humbled this past week when I received the award. It's a very humbling experience for me, but I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have. I spoke a little bit about some of the things I'm going to speak about today. I spoke a little bit about it at the Patient Symposium, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I have to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the chance at life. And what I found out in 2013, that time was no more guaranteed for me. My story starts off in December 19th, 1990. That is exactly the day and the time that my mother and my father first saw me for the first time. My parents had a desire, and that was to have children, and what ended up happening, they were not able to have children. And so they started looking at different ways on, what other options are there, and adoption was one of the options. And so they decided to look at adoption. And I'm grateful for that day. I'm grateful for how they went down to Guatemala City, Guatemala, and held me in the arms for the first time. And what was even more amazing after that, they adopted me, but then they brought me back here to the United States. What a phenomenal thing to be, what a phenomenal gift to be given, to come back here to America, the United States of America. I lived a normal life just like every other kid, every other young boy. I did a lot of the different things that most of them would do. But at age 18, I had a significant change in my life, where at age 18, I had a stroke due to hypertension. One of the things about it is that my blood pressure was extremely high. As I've said before, it was 320 over 280, extremely high. It's a wonder I didn't blow anything else out. And they said it hit right in the exact spot that it should have hit. If it would have hit too high or too low, I'd either be dead or I would be paralyzed. Thankfully, I did have some after effects after the stroke, but thankfully I got it all back, which was amazing to me. And the one thing is, as being a young kid at age 18, 19, you kind of, I take on the world without nobody's help. Didn't need the medication I was taking, didn't need any of that. But just like it is with every other lesson in life, if you don't learn it the first time, it always comes back around. And that's what it did here. And in April of 2013, I was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. And at the time, I didn't understand exactly what all was happening. I just heard that I had to go on dialysis. But I do remember the ER doctor. He came in. He said he wanted to draw labs. He wanted to give me blood pressure medication because I was having a buzzing in the back of my head. Being I had a prior stroke that really kind of set my alarm bells off. We need to go in. We need to get checked. We need to see. I don't want to have another stroke because this time I could be paralyzed or I could be, I could be dead. So we went in. They checked blood pressure. I was high blood pressure. I said, just one medication. Let me go home. Let me go do whatever. And he says, I'd really like to take lab work on you. I want to take your blood work and see where you're at. And that day truly was definitely, saved my life that day. Little did I realize, little did I know that blood work, those tubes that went back, would give me results that would give me another opportunity to live. And what ended up happening is he came back and he had diagnosed me with end-stage renal disease, meaning both kidneys had shut down. Without those labs, as said on the video, I'd be a memory. I'd be a tombstone that my parents that had done so much to adopt me, I'd be a tombstone that they would go to every so often to remember their son. I'd be, as on the video, I wouldn't have my wife. I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't have, of course, I wouldn't have my children. My parents wouldn't have the grandchildren that they have. And so, as laboratory professionals, what you do not only affects the patient, but it affects the patient's family. And how much impact does that have? One good diagnosis and one diagnosis a patient, and they're able to get the treatment, it can affect generations to come. The understanding of what the labs did for me that day was not fully understood until later, and I didn't really know what pathology was. I didn't know until last year exactly what pathology was. The National Kidney Foundation asked me to go to this meeting to go speak and share my story. He said, go speak, share your story. It's like, oh yeah, let's go. It's about pathology. Okay, cool. What's pathology? It's kind of ironic. So at the place I work with some medical teams. I went and asked them a little bit, and I got very sparse information. Very little. But when I got there and I sit down, and Dr. Hilborn, who's here, he gave a speech that session. So did Dr. Vaslati, who was on the video, and some others. I started to understand the impact of what the lab's do and exactly what they were. But, it's jumping a little ahead of my story. But understanding the lab, what they did for me that day, was finally starting to be understood after the diagnosis, after things were going well in my life. For you see, I started dialysis a few days after I was diagnosed and started the wonderful and exciting journey called dialysis. I can guarantee not many patients say that because of some of the things that they see. A lot of times they see the negative in what dialysis was and is. And dialysis, it can be negative. There's good days and there's bad days. And I've told patients time after time, I said I had good days and I had bad days, but my good days outweighed my bad. One of the things is during my time as a dialysis patient, I never saw the pathologist, never knew what they were. Generally what would happen is lab results would come back and the dietitian would come and see me because she wanted to have a little talk to say, you can't eat this, you need to downgrade on your phosphorus levels, your potassium's going a little too high, your calcium's too high, you need to do this and this and this. And then, if I was too bad, then the nephrologist would come by and say the same things. I really never understood exactly what the pathologist did during that time. But when I got what was requested to speak, they said they give some communication tips, how to communicate with your patients. I was in the sales field for a number of years, and a lot of this is from that field, but sales field really is a communication with another person about an idea or about whatever you're doing. One thing I would encourage is to be prepared. Prepare yourself. Maybe go off somewhere before you go see your patients, because a lot of the diagnosis that you're giving, some of the diagnosis can be a very negative thing. And sometimes if you just go in, you just go without preparation, you don't know where it's going to go. But prepare yourself. Get a motivational thought, something that'll help you to be more aware, get a more positive mindset going. That's the next thing is positive thinking goes a long way. And in today's society, in today's world, I guarantee you get the device called the cell phone, you hit the news app, it's going to be what? Negative. To be positive is extremely difficult. Now you think of it, you're a pathologist or you're part of the medical care team and you're getting ready to go tell some more negative news. If you have a negative mindset and you give a negative news, it's going to come off 10 times worse than if you had a positive mindset about whatever and given the negative news that you may have to give. I can only imagine what that ER doctor had to do that day when he came in. I was 22 years old when I was diagnosed. I can only imagine what the thoughts that were going through his mind as he had to just at least give me that. Another thing is the 15-second rule. This is another thing that I learned in sales, and that was you have 15 seconds, total 15 seconds to make an impact, good or bad, on your patient or on the customer, in our case, on our patients. 15 seconds isn't a lot of time, but if you prepare and you have some positive thoughts, those 15 seconds will be a lot more, you can get a lot more positive effects out of them. If you go in, you're unprepared, you have a negative mindset, the patients can feel that. And being as I was a patient and, we'd see the medical team, I could always tell if something was going on with them. I could feel it. And as a patient, I really, they would come around, they'd start talking, and I could just feel if they were negative or if they were happy, sad. Being that I saw my medical team probably 3 days a week because that's the treatments. As a dialysis patient, you have 3 days a week, 4 hours of treatment. That's total about 16 hours, if not more, a week that you have to spend in dialysis. So the 15-second rule when you're meeting new patients is very vital. That 15 seconds can be a life changer to that patient. Be careful of your words and how you say them. They can make an impact negatively or positively. We got a little story about this. During my time as a dialysis patient, my nephrologist, I was having some issues with my labs, meaning I wasn't eating what I should have been. But my phosphorus went up to above 9. My calcium went up to above 9. My potassium was okay, but some of my levels were starting going out of whack, so to speak. Dietitian came and talked to me. Nothing happened. I said, yeah, I'll take care of it next time. I'll take care of it. And it continued on for a few months, and then new nephrologist came up. And this was the key point about the words. He came up to me, and this is exactly what happened. He said, Mr. Reed, look at your labs. You're in a very dangerous situation. Your potassiums or your phosphorus is up and your calcium's up. And if something don't change soon, you're going to go into calciphylaxis, which could be a very slow and painful death. Now, as innocent as that sounds, let me step on the other side of the chair, and let me tell you what I heard. In 6 months, if something don't change, you're going to die. All I heard was, you're gonna die in 6 months. That's all you have. That's all the time you have is 6 months. And I'll never forget that night when I went to my truck to drive home. I'll never forget what happened on the way. You see, the battle of dialysis, at least in a lot of things that I see, is 99% of it's in the mind. And if it's not battled correctly in the mind, it's going to be lost in the physical very quickly. And how many times did I see that? The patients would come in, and they'd come in, and you just see this look of defeat in your face, and you knew it wouldn't be too long before they wouldn't be coming anymore because they had passed on. But as I walked out the hospital that day and I drove home, I remember driving along down the side of the road. I'd been married 1.5 years, a little bit less. And all I could think about is I only had 6 months to live. I had so much more life ahead of me. I wanted this, I wanted that, but it didn't look like it was possible. Now, keep in mind what the nephrologist said. He didn't say that, but what the patient said, what the patient heard, what I heard, was different. That night I went home as I drove down the road, and I bawled like a baby because I didn't know exactly how I was going to face it. What in the world was I going to do for 2 or 3 days, for days on end? The nights, I can tell you the nights were tough. Michelle, I'm sure you had those nights when you didn't know. You didn't know if you were going to be here the next day or not. Time was no more a guarantee. But something really great happened that year. As I went through that, I figured, you know what, might as well enjoy life to its fullest. That's on August 20th, I decided that was my birthday, August 20th. So I said, you know what? Whether or not whatever happens, I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to give everything that I have to this life. You know, none of us are guaranteed that. None of us are guaranteed next year, next month, next week, tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed even the next second. But I decided I was just going to live life and enjoy it. So I threw my birthday party. And when I did that, I had one of the greatest birthday presents in the world, and that's when my sister-in-law came up to me and she said, I want to donate my kidney to you. You're an O positive. I'm an O positive. Let's start the process. I was like, okay, this sounds good. It's a little hope and all the things. Now, prior to that, of course, in the spring, I was telling you all about that. But then I come back, and here comes some hope, some more energy, that shot, that adrenaline rush that I needed to push me on further. And we went through the whole process. I think it was about 7 or 8 months before we got approved to get transplanted. And April 13th, 2017 was when I graduated from dialysis to transplant. What a phenomenal day that was. One of the things as a dialysis patient that I think every one dialysis patient does struggle, sometimes even given just a general smile. When communicating with your patients, remember to smile. Somebody told me this quote down at the bottom back in 2012. I'll never forget when she told me this. She said, she didn't say patient, she said smile, it makes the world a better place. But I say smile, it may make your patient's world a better place. Just a small smile, a smile of encouragement. That smile can change somebody's life. After transplantation, I found out how pathology is extremely involved in my care. As saying, I had blood work, 2 times a week. It's now down to every 2 months. It shows me where I'm at. It's my medical GPS. My medical GPS gets turned on every 2 months to make sure where I'm at in a physical sense, to make sure my kidneys are working. And there's been times, I can tell you there's been times in my transplant life that I got my lab results and I'd get a call from the transplant center, hey, your creatinine's creeping up a little bit, are you dehydrated? Drink some more water and let's go back in and see what it is again. It's my medical GPS. This is why I care for pathology. What y'all do helps me to know where I'm at. And you know what? If that GPS and that map is always updated, I'll always know where I'm at. I'll always know exactly where I'm at with my physical ways. And this is the things that is so key that y'all do each and every day. It can also show what may be ahead and how I must prepare physically and mentally. Now, I don't live with kidney disease. I live with my transplant. Some people ask me, well, how long is your transplant going to last? I say, as long as it's going to last. I'm not going to put a time limit on it, because if I put a time limit on it, what's going to happen? It'll last about that time limit. After my transplant, 2 weeks after my transplant, as a transplant patient, we're supposed to have a care partner. I did for 2 weeks, and then my good wife and was my care partner. But my son was born 2 weeks later, so I ended up having to be her care partner, which was definitely interesting. Within a few months after transplantation, I got the opportunity to go back to dialysis, but this time not as a patient. This time as an employee, as a staff member. And as it goes forth, if anything that we do, to be called to the field that we're at is a very high calling. I'll never forget where I was at when I got the call to be in the nephrology field. I was so grateful to have the opportunity. I'm still so grateful to have the opportunity to go back. In my day job, I do biomedical equipment technician. I work on machines, I work on ROs, I do that. But at night, and other days, I'm able to work with patients. I'm able to work with UVA transplant too. Some other things. But I want to close out with this. Without knowing where you're at and where you want to go, you'll never know what beautiful life is in store for you. If you don't know where you're at physically, then how are you going to know where you need to go? Being that I didn't know where I was at, I'm grateful for the opportunity that labs gave me, that opportunity to know where I was at so that I can know where I need to go. But I would say this even in a personal way. If you don't know where you're at personally, whether it's business, whatever it may be, if you don't know where you're at and you don't know where you go, you'll never know what beautiful life can be in store for you. It's kind of like the quote Zig Ziglar says, how can a man hit a target that he cannot see? But the most important question would be, how can a man hit a target that they do not have? Have a purpose in life. Know where you want to be. Know what your calling is. And if you do, you will find out the beautiful life that is in store for you. You'll see the view from the top, so to speak. You'll see the view from the peak of the mountain, and you will have a wonderful life. Thank you. That's all I have.